Okay, in this lesson in Chapter 8, we're going to talk about adding and subtracting rational expressions. Again, this is part 1 of 2. First thing we have to realize is that we want a common denominator, so combined fractions, and we want a common denominator, and again, the lowest common denominator is a lot of times what we refer to. Okay, so those are two things here. So let's just start with just plain old fraction numbers, and then we'll work our way into polynomials because the same thing applies here. Notice that both of these have a common denominator of 5, so you simply just have that on the bottom, and you simply add together the top, and we get 3/5. Looks good. Okay. Now looking at this one here, what we have to do is change the 2, and put it over 1 and change it into a fraction. Now how do we go ahead and change it to a common denominator? We need to add what's missing. We are missing a 2 on the bottom. So I added 2 to the bottom and to the top, and now I have 1/4 plus 4/2. You add those together, and now we get 5/2. Okay, so that's essentially what we're doing here. The same thing over on this one here. We're going to say, what's our common denominator? Well, our common denominator is going to be 5 times 3. We need both of those in the bottom. So what I'm going to do is add what's missing. Here, I'm missing a 3 on this side, and here, I'm missing a 5. So whatever you add to the top, you add to the bottom, because anything over itself reduces to 1. And notice we have a common denominator on the bottom now of 15. So on the top, we basically have 3 plus 10 for a total of, write it over here, 13 divided by 15. Okay, so that's essentially what we're shooting for. We're going to follow the same philosophy moving on to polynomials. So looking at this one, we have to identify where do we see factors at. We have 2 factors down here, 4 and an x, and they both have the same thing. So our common denominator is 4x. Okay, you don't need the parentheses there, but I'm just kind of showing you how it groups together. And we just add the top together, and we get 10. Now notice on this one, we have a 4, and we have an x, but notice they're separated. So we need a common denominator of 4 and x together. Okay? Again, you don't have to show it in parentheses. I just want to show look at it as factors. So here's our 2 factors. And you have to add what's missing. So on the top one, what are we missing in the first part? We're missing an x. So let's add it top and bottom. Over here, we're missing a 4. Add it top and bottom. Okay, and again, I like to use parentheses just to show what's going on. So here, that's 7x plus 3 and 4 make 12. Okay, and again, that's our now combined fraction. Okay, so those are the elements we're looking for. Now again, we're going to look at a couple more complex problems here. Now this first one, when we see x plus 6, a lot of people say, well, is it x a factor and 6 factor? No. The whole thing, x plus 6, that one binomial is a factor. So that's the only factor in this problem. It has 2 terms in it, but the only factor. So then now we have 2x minus 5, and we can just combine it like that. Okay. Now, looking at this one, x plus 6 is a factor, and x is a factor. So in my final answer, I want 2 things on the bottom, x plus 6 and an x. So now I'm going to add what's missing. Here I'm missing an x. Here I'm missing a x plus 6. Okay, and again, I like to put things in parentheses just because it clarifies what's what. Now on top, I'm going to put those 2 together, and we have 2x. And I'm going to distribute the 3x with that. So we're going to have 3x squared plus 18x. Okay. Now I'm going to look, how can I combine to the top here? I'm just going to write over here. We have 3x squared plus 20x all over 6x plus 6 and x. Now notice, what can I do on the top here? I can take out a common factor here. So I'm going to take out an x, and I'm left with 3x plus 20. And I'll put that over x plus 6, and notice the x over here. And those are factors that now can be canceled, and our final result is simply 3x plus 20 divided by x plus 6. Okay? So that's what we're shooting for here. Okay? I'm going to show you one more example. It has several things. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to basically rewrite this problem and give myself a little space. I'm going to write 4 over 4x. I'm going to give a little more space and put 3x over x squared. And then I'll go minus 5 over 4. Now I'm going to go ahead and factor this one right away. If I take a 4 out, I have x minus 1. And I want to do that and split it into factors. And really, when I look at this x squared, I'm going to change that to simply x times x, just to show what we have. Now we have to look, what is our common denominator? Well, here we have, I'm going to scoot this up just a bit so we have some room. We're going to have, we need a 4, which we get from right there. We have 1x, but notice here we have another x, and then we have, the 4 is already accounted for, and now we have the x minus 1. So those are the different factors. 1, 2, 3, 4 factors to account for. Okay. So now we're going to go back and add what's missing. Now notice for the first one, we have a 4, we have an x, but we need another x, and we need an x minus 1. So I'm going to multiply by x and x minus 1. For the middle term, we need a 4, and now we need an x minus 1. So I'm going to multiply by 4 and an x minus 1. Over here, we have a 4 and x minus 1. What are we missing? We're missing the x squared. So I'm going to add whatever's missing. Now notice, on every single one of it, I highlight in black, common denominator, common denominator, common denominator. So now that we have it all together, now I can go through and combine these together. So I'm going to do it in different colors here. I'm going to start with the top here. I'm going to distribute, so we have 4x squared minus 4x. Okay. Move on to the next one. Put those together, we get 12x times x minus 1. So we're going to have plus 12x squared and then minus 12x. Moving on to the last part, minus 5x squared. Okay. And then the last step, let me just go ahead and move down a little bit if I can. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and combine these together. So what do I have first? We have x squared, so I have one here, I have one there, and one there. Okay. So 4 plus 12, 16, minus 5 is 11. We have 11x squared. Moving on to my x's, negative 4 minus 12 more is negative 16. X all over 4x squared times x minus 1. Now again, notice I left in the factors. What can I do at the top? I can factor out an x. So now I'm left with 11x minus 16 over 4x squared over x minus 1 there. Okay, now what can I reduce here? That x is now gone, and it cancels with 1 of the x's there, and there is your final result. Okay. Notice the key. Get a common denominator, add what's missing, combine like terms, and simplify. Okay. So that's the goal of what we're shooting for here today. What I want you to do is look at the next slide here, and I want you to try those two problems. Let's go ahead and combine those two, see what we get.